The West Asia region is really tense. An angry Iran is now threatening vengeance against Israel and is reportedly designing its next course of action with its proxy groups to avenge the assassination of a high-profile figure in Hamas and also in Hezbollah. Iran Next Port analyzes the options that are open for Iran.
The assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh on Iranian soil has been particularly embarrassing for Tehran, revealing Israel's capability to strike within Iran's borders. The assassinations have intensified the urgency for Iran and its allies to respond effectively while avoiding a full-blown regional war. Iran is meeting its proxies to decide upon its next course of action. Iran's network of allied groups spans multiple countries, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and Hamas in Gaza, Shiite militias in Syria and Iraq, and the Houthis in Yemen. Hezbollah, often considered the crown jewel of Iran's proxy network, boasts an impressive arsenal of precision rockets and drones, claiming the ability to strike any part of Israel. Hezbollah's rocket stockpile, estimated to be around 100,000, is complemented by thousands of battle-hardened fighters. Since the outbreak of the Israel-Hamas war, the Lebanon-based group has been launching rockets into northern Israel, maintaining pressure on multiple fronts. The scope of Iran's influence is evident in its backing of the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who have launched ballistic missiles at Israeli targets and continue to challenge U.S. naval forces in the Red Sea, disrupting crucial maritime routes. Additionally, Iran supports various militias which back the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad, allegedly using Syrian territory as a conduit for weapons shipments to Hezbollah in Lebanon. In Iraq, Kataib Hezbollah, a constituent of the Islamic resistance, is Iran's biggest backer. It has been involved in several violent incidents and attacks against U.S. and coalition forces in Iraq. While Israel has been attacking Iranian proxies, its ally, U.S., is deep entrenched in West Asia with its multiple air bases. There are also 12 American warships in the region, including the USS Theodore Roosevelt aircraft carrier. The Biden administration has promised support for Israel but urges restraint from all sides. The current crisis bears striking similarities to the April confrontation when Israel's strike on an Iranian consular building in Damascus, killing 2 Iranian generals, nearly sparked a full-scale war. Iran's unprecedented direct retaliation against Israel was ultimately contained through diplomatic efforts. Now, as tensions reach a fever pitch once again, the big question is, will back-channel negotiations cool tempers and prevent a wider war? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what at this moment is happening in the Middle East, we're being joined by Mr. Elijah J. Magnier, who's a war correspondent and an analyst, is joining us live from Brussels. Mr. Elijah Magnier, thank you very much indeed, sir, for making time out and speaking to us here on WION. Let me in fact ask you this. The fact that this assassination of Ismail Haniyeh was carried out at a time when he was in Tehran, what do you think this does to any kind of negotiations that were ongoing for some kind of a truce deal in the Gaza Strip, and what does it mean for Iran especially?
Thank you for having me. First of all, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has assassinated the main negotiator, which means that the negotiations will halt for a moment, and then after a few days, Hamas will appoint a new political bureau leader, and the negotiation will continue if Benjamin Netanyahu wants to continue negotiating. So far, he has managed to sabotage all the negotiation, not giving enough power to the Mossad chief and the Shabak, the internal security chief. And both men have been complaining about it, feeling that they are crippled without having the authority to negotiate. And when they do that, then they return back to Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu changes his mind. Obviously, the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh is a clear message that Netanyahu is really not very interested in the negotiations at the moment, neither to negotiate the return of the prisoners. As far as Iran, and that's your second part of the question, Iran has been attacked at home. The attack happened in Tehran, and a guest has been killed. As a sovereign country, it needs to go to the United Nations, and if the United Nations fail, then it's going to act exactly like Israel and respond and retaliate to this aggression.
Right. Now, the question that a lot of people would, of course, want to know is what options does Iran have at its disposal? How will Iran now respond to an assassination that's been carried out on its soil?
Iran doesn't have an option, really, because with Israel, we've learned throughout the decades, if an attack carried out by Israel is left unanswered, then the Israelis will carry a second, a third, and more attacks. This is exactly what is pushing Hezbollah in Lebanon to say that it is going to retaliate. Otherwise, every day, Hezbollah will have attacks in Beirut. So Iran feels exactly in the same position where, despite the support that the Americans and NATO is going to provide Israel with by intercepting missiles and drones and cruise missiles, Iran has to retaliate.
Now, a lot of people are saying, and this is something that's going to be talked about in the days to come as well, if Iran responds with hard force, then that would mean that we would be looking at the possibility of an all-out war in the region where the Americans would also get involved. And that would effectively mean that Iran would be falling into the trap of Netanyahu. Do you think the Iranians would be considering any kind of a hard response, or are we going to witness something like what happened on the 13th of April, where the Iranians launched missiles and drones by giving due notice that this was something that they were doing as a response to an earlier attack by the Israelis where they had killed off some of the IRGC commanders in Syria?
You've raised a very valid point. However, the difference between what the leader of the revolution, Sayyid Ali Khamenei of Iran, between what happened when Israel bombed the consulate in Damascus, said that we are going to respond. This time he said we're going to seek revenge, which means that the hit is going to be major, bigger, and against different targets. It doesn't mean that they're going to target civilian infrastructure or objectives, but they're going to target military objectives.
Right.
Now, yes, you're right by saying a possibility of spillover is on the table, but Iran doesn't have a choice, really. And even Israel doesn't have a choice but to accept the retaliation, but it can retaliate. This is where the Americans will play a role, as they have already done in the last attack that Iran carried out, and try to calm everything, because it is not in the advantage of the American to see an all-out war in the Middle East.
My final question to you, Mr. Magnier. Iran also will have to do more than some soul-searching, because the details that are coming out about the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh point to a pretty disturbing fact, that a bomb was perhaps kept in the guest house where Ismail Haniyeh was staying, and that bomb had been kept there 2 months before to the actual assassination. This clearly means that the IRGC, which is responsible for the safety of the people in that particular guest house, and that was responsible for the safety of Ismail Haniyeh, perhaps could have been infiltrated by Mossad. Without that, there is no way that a bomb could have been kept in the guest house for 2 long months without it being detected by the IRGC.
Absolutely. You have a good point here again. It may not be an infiltration into the IRGC, and maybe, but it shows that there is a filtration in the security system. We've seen something similar against Prime Minister of the UK, Margaret Thatcher, where she lost her husband in Ireland when she stayed in a hotel. So this is something, a deja vu. It's a style that terrorists have used in the past, and this time the Israelis have used it. And it shows that because of the variety of the Iranian population and because the diaspora is huge outside Iran and it is used by the Americans and the Israeli Mossad, then it is not that difficult to infiltrate security forces, particularly with the dire economic situation of the country,
right,
and where the media and the propaganda about Iran has been overwhelming for the last 43 years. So yes, there is a security breach indeed.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Elijah Magnier, for joining us and getting us that perspective there.
Thank you for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.